Another blood-red sunset and yet another moon face, and still another 100 miles to my next resting place. Driving down the road, eyes on the horizon. Within my car, I'm all alone, but feeling good and feeling strong, knowing that this path I'm on brings me to myself. I'm driving.
Hey now all, I'm Joey C. Welcome back to another episode of Spirit Sherpa. This is the show that helps and encourages you on your journey to unlock your magic mojo. With me, as always, is the Spirit Doctor, Kelle Sparta. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Joey.
I want to wish you happy Inauguration Day, but that would indicate that we're not recording this on the day we're posting it. But people know that already. So happy Inauguration Day, Kelly.
Happy Inauguration Day. The magic. Oh, my God. You know, we're going to, we have to take us an aside to talk about this because I watched the inauguration, and the moment where Garth Brooks came out to sing Amazing Grace, and he did the last verse of the song, and he asked everyone in America to join in with him. Now, first, country music singer. So bringing in the right, with the country music singer, who, by the way, has sung at every inauguration except for Trump's and one other, I can't remember, singing a black spiritual. So bringing in the left from the church, which is, again, the right, right? So, I mean, it's just a beautiful choice, right, to do that. But the entire message throughout the whole inauguration was unity. And what did Garth Brooks come in and do? He did some serious freaking magic, man. Oh my God. So what you may not know is that the Washington, D.C. is built on a Masonic sigil, and it was designed by the Masons. There's a pentacle that exists in the center of the city. There's lots of sacred geometry that exists in the city. And I am personally of the opinion that the founders created the magic to hold the country together, and that whoever sits in the presidential seat gives a little bit of their life force to maintain the country. And that's why they come out looking so haggard. So looking so much older, because they literally are. They're being drained of their life force, right? So beware what you ask for when you want to be president. Anyway, that's my personal opinion. I don't have anything on which to base it except what I see happen. So it's more than stress can account for. So, because the staffers don't look that old and they go through the same stress. So, right. So the point being that Garth Brooks did this piece of magic, which I'm sure he didn't even know he was doing magic, but you're standing in the sigil, right? Because the Capitol is actually part of the sigil. You're standing on the sigil doing something specifically designed to do working on the U.S. people. And you're doing it in a collective fashion at the end of a whole long line of intention setting. I mean, the man just, he rocked it too. Because I don't know about you, Joey, but I sang along, or I tried. I mean, tears streaming down my face, and I was having a hard time getting words out of my mouth. And Jeff was all choked up trying to sing along too, my husband. And we're like, because it was just like there was so much energy, because it was so many people at the culmination of this ritual of unification. The entire inauguration was a ritual of unification. And so it was a beautiful piece of magic. Now, if you missed seeing it, fear not. Magic doesn't exist in time and space. It exists on its own level. You can tap in at any point. Just go find the recording and watch it and sing along, and you can participate, and you will have this experience. It was amazing. And I was floored that none of the commentary afterward said anything about it. But I know that they probably didn't have the experience because they didn't actually sing. until you sing, you didn't have the experience.
Well, and they probably were overwhelmed by the young woman who was the poet laureate, who was absolutely fierce and wonderful and just powerful in her own right. And I think people were blown away by that.
Could you imagine? I think she's like 23.
Yeah, she's so young and so amazingly in tune. It was wonderful. It's just, it was really an interesting thing. And I agree. I was in the same boat. I was choked up pretty much for the entire day. Just watching, I was just overwhelmed with emotion. It was really wonderful. Anyway, but that's not what we're talking about today.
No, it's not.
We're back into the Wheel of the Year series.
We are, because we're coming up on the next holiday. So there are high and low holidays within the Wheel of the Year. And the high holidays fall on the solstices and the equinoxes. And the low holidays fall at roughly the midpoint between them. Not always, but roughly. Okay.
Is there a term for that midpoint?
No. At least not that I know of. Maybe somebody out there knows better, but I've never heard of one. The holiday that we're coming into is technically a low holiday. And it is called Imbolc in pagan circles. And the Catholic Church adopted it, as they did with most of our holidays from the pagan calendar. And they called it Candlemas. Okay. And so technically it falls on the 1st of February, if you're looking at historical references to it, which is, it's mostly a Celtic tradition. Imbolc, it's St. Bridget's Day. It's a fertility rite. Yep. And so it typically fell on the 1st of February, although, there's arguments for it being related to the first shoots of spring or the first ewes, coming into heat or whatever. I don't know. But, but there's talk of that. In modern pagan times, most of the pagans I know celebrated on Groundhog's Day. Okay. And which is technically the 2nd of February because, it's the date in our calendar where we look to Punxsutawney Phil and, do we have more winter or do we have spring and what's going to happen? And, and it's become the U.S.'s sort of way of looking at, the coming of spring, right? So at Yule, we celebrate the return of the light, right? It's the darkest day of the year on the winter solstice, and so we celebrate the returning of the light. In Imbolc, we celebrate the returning of the greenery, right? It's the time in which spring is starting to come into fruition, right? And at the same time, and typically there's a feast, okay? So there's some sort of feast that you have. And at the same time, typically it would be the time to take stock of your stores, to see that you have enough to get you through the rest of winter. It's a little bit like the life review we do on New Year's these days, right? Because you're sort of looking at what you've got and what you don't have and whatever. But it's less of a sort of overall life review and more of a physicality life review. What do we have in the storehouse? How many spoons do we have, right? We talked about spoons when COVID started coming in. But in this particular instance, it's what do we have? What resources are available to us? And are they sufficient to get us where we want to go before more resources come in? And so if you have abundance, you have a great feast. If you do not, you begin rationing. Right? That's sort of the way of this. And so there are many different ways that many different formats for ritual for this holiday. And everybody does it a little bit differently. Okay. If you want to read about the traditional one, the Wikipedia site on Imbolc, which we're going to put in the show notes, actually has a lot of really good content, including some of the original rituals from the Celtic and Irish side of things. for my part, what we have always done for Imbolc, and I think, Joey, I was trying to think today what the very first ritual was that I participated in. And I think it was an Imbolc ritual.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I think it was a really long time ago. And so they mushed together in my brain, but I remember. And so, Kathy talks about her first ritual being that they had her hold death, that she was death in the ritual. And has she told that story on here yet? Yeah. Okay. So hers was, she was death. Mine was, I had to get naked. We did a purification rite. Now, this was a circle of people that I worked with who were really close friends of mine. I'd known them for a while. And there were 5 of us in total. And we got together. Actually, I think only 4 of us did this ritual, now that I'm remembering it. I think there were only 4 of us. And we got together and we did a purification rite to begin it, in which we each took turns having a bath where the other people bathed us. And so you strip down and you get in the water and you use the salt water and the scrubs and it's a very loving ritual, right? And we took turns going through that. And then we came and did our taking stock. Right. And we sat down and we wrote out and talked about what it was that we were taking stock of in our lives and what we were, what we felt like we needed more of, that we needed to bring into fruition, and what we felt like we were done with and that we could let go of, and, how much was there. And then we created an altar together around this concept of what we were bringing into fruition. Because again, it's the beginning of spring. So what are you calling forth from the ground, right? And so it's an early planting time too for people in certain climates. It wouldn't work so well in the north, but in my climate right here, you could do early planting at this time. And so there was, that where we created this altar around it, and we, I'm trying to remember. We did some sort of burning. I think we burned the things that we were letting go of. I think that's what we did. And then we had a feast to celebrate so the feast for us, as opposed to being do we have enough and then we'll celebrate with extra, right? We did the feast as a manifestation to say, this is everything we've asked for come to fruition, and we are reveling in and literally taking in the abundance of what we have created. And so that's a possible ritual, right? There's a lot of different ways to do Imbolc. And if you go online and you search, you'll find a bunch of different ways to do Imbolc, right? But the short thing is you cast a circle. You start with a circle. You have an intention, okay? And then you have to bring that intention to fruition through the process of the ritual, right? And you're using sympathetic magic, right? That's the whole point of doing it at this time of year, is that the energy of the earth is in alignment with the energy of what you're doing. And therefore it facilitates the shift with you. Right. And because Imbolc is sort of a fluid sort of thing, we just had the episode with Charlemagne talking about the moon. Right. So if you want to look at the moon and what phase it's in and correlate that with Imbolc, you can do it on the 31st or the 1st or the 2nd, right? Depending on whether if the moon is just this close, right? If it's not exactly right,
I think she actually called it the lunar tide, or lunar, where there was that area around which contained the energy.
Yeah, the moon tide. Yeah,
the moon tide. That's what it was. Yeah.
So you can do that with Imbolc as well, because it's a smushable thing, right? Much like Easter moves around. The solstices not so much. Right? The equinoxes, not so much. Those are what they are, and they are distinct points in time. So you don't want to judge those. But the in-between spots, you can judge them a little, right?
It sounds like from what we're talking about here with regards to the ritual we're discussing about releasing and bringing in, this is very similar to what we talked about in Yule as well. It sounds like these, when we discuss the Wheel of the Year and these, either the high or the low celebrations, those are good times to do this taking stock rituals. It seems like, at least with the first two that we've discussed, Yule and now Imbolc.
Yeah, you'll see that also in Beltane, and that's because we're in the time of the waxing of the sun, right?
So this is very similar to what we'd also discussed in the lunar astrology episode, where we were using the cycle of the moon to find that sympathetic magic spot. Here we're talking the cycle of the sun almost to find that sympathetic
we are.
Magic spot.
It is the cycle of the sun. So it's that when you start to get into this, you start to recognize that everything relates to everything else, right? And the more you learn, the more everything relates to everything else. And so after a while, you just start going, oh, yeah, so I'll just, judge this in, judge that out. It'll be fine because they all mean the same thing anyway, right? And that's where you get people, people make such a big deal about cross-pollinating different belief structures. And they're like, oh, cultural appropriation, blah, blah, blah. It's like, if it's my practice, and if I have studied that practice and integrated that practice into my being, and I choose to zhuzh it together with another practice that I have studied and brought into my being, then that's not cultural appropriation. That's me working with my culture, right? Because it's become mine, right? Now, if somebody doesn't want to teach me something that is their culture, that is their right. Right? It is not my right to go in and steal it from them. Right? But if they have given it to me freely, then it is mine to freely use. Right? And so, people, there's the PC-ness makes me nuts. There's value to sustainability. And that is part of being part of the earth. And that's, as we're talking about the Wheel of the Year, we are talking about coming into alignment with the earth, coming into alignment with the seasons, coming into alignment with the way in which the energy moves and what energies are available at different times. It brings us into alignment with the earth itself. Doing things in a sustainable fashion is a reflection of being in alignment with the earth, because you begin to recognize that not everything exists forever. Right? The Western world, the U.S. in particular, we are takers society. If you've never read Call Me Ishmael, go get it. It's totally worth it, right? But we are a taker society. And therefore, because we are a taker society based on monetary gain and, not driven by heart-centered values anymore, we used to be. 60 years ago, it was a little bit more heart-centered, although the Black community would not agree with me on that.
Okay. Yes.
Right. But the white culture at least had some heart to it then. There was a sense of community and working together, and not the divisiveness that we see today. There's many, many other problems. Many, many other problems. But we've lost even whatever semblance of heart we had in the interim. And so the challenge is that as we go through our process, we need to not only connect back into the earth, but we need to connect back into our hearts. And we have to recognize that everything we do has consequences. Everything we touch touches others, and that there's a ripple effect that goes out. And so somebody asked me the other day where I sourced my smudge from. And I was like, I buy it at the store. What do you mean? And I went and looked it up and went, holy crap. I had no idea that there were companies doing unsustainable smudge sourcing, sage sourcing. And I was like, I will be very carefully choosing my sage provider from here on out, because I did not realize that that was an issue. I just assumed that they grew it and that they then harvested what they had. And no, what they're doing is going out and taking wild sage and Palo Santo in particular. I don't care for Palo Santo. I don't like the smell of it, but I would never buy Palo Santo right now because it is an endangered species. It is an endangered plant. And I did not know that. I don't buy it, so it wasn't relevant to me. But when I was looking up the smudge stuff, the sage stuff, I discovered that as well. And so my strong suggestion to anyone listening to this is that you not buy Palo Santo, because it is, and this is where cultural appropriation comes in, right? Because we in the Western world, who are not part of the original tradition that was using it, have so over-purchased it that it is no longer available to those for whom it is a cultural practice. And that's not fair, right? So there's that. So,
and there's an entire
kind of
history.
off-track.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's an entire history to cultural appropriation that we can go back, even the Roman Empire and then how that, but they're all different, right? But when we talk about, like you said, we got a little off track. So let's bring us back a little to Imbolc and how we're.
When we're talking about ritual, we have to talk about it because, this came from the Celts. Okay, so is that cultural appropriation? Well, I don't know, So at some point, you can't say that I can't use anything.
Well, and that's it. The study of any of these things that we're talking about, specifically with this series, and largely with a lot of what we talk about within energy work, spirituality, and magic, it's coming from, in some cases, a whole host of different backgrounds that have established these things that got changed over the years and pulled into different things. It's not a misuse of them. It's a reuse of them, maybe in a different way, but with the same respect shown to them that they were originally intended.
And they were almost certainly uses or reuses of something that came before them as well. And this is the piece that we have to recognize. So there is when you are popularizing something that then inhibits someone else's practice of their culture, that to me is cultural appropriation, right? And so the Palo Santo thing totally applies in that regard. Now, when you are using something that has come down through the generations and has been, it's been morphed a million times. You just know. I morph it. Everybody who taught me morphed it. Everybody who taught them morphed it. I swear to you, it is not the shit that the first person got, right?
Well, and that's the case in a lot of what we do in our particular community, is that things morph because people feel something in a slightly different way, and that's just how it rolls.
Exactly. And, I've had people look at me and say, well, you can't say you're a shaman because you're not Native American. And I'm like, well, the term shaman actually comes from Russia. And there's been a shaman in every tribal culture, everywhere. And they're like, well, you have to be trained by a certified shaman. There's no such thing as a third certified shaman. Let's just start with that. And, the idea that there's this, we have this very Western view of things that says, well, you have to have the stamp of approval on your forehead, right? But any shaman worth their salt is going to tell you that spirit just tells them what to do. and that's not about having been trained per se, although, training happens along the way. Spirit runs you into people who tell you what to do. if you didn't take a specific course, then the spirit will just, whack you with the different people that you need. But, it's the idea that a specific thing could be proprietary is problematic. Because if spirit hands it to you, then spirit hands it to you. So, when I do my sound healings, people say, oh, you sound Native American. I'm like, well, one of the energies that I channel as I do my sound healings is Native American. One of them is Mongolian.
I was just going to say, I've noticed some other in there. Mongolian was one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and sometimes it's just coming through me. And that's just what it is, right? So you're holding what you're holding in the moment. And that's going to be true whatever ritual you run. And so, I'm going to give you some ideas in this process with the Wheel of the Year. I'm going to give you some ideas for how you can engage. But I want you to engage your creativity too, right? I want you to think about how it's relevant to you, how this time of the year, to sit in meditation with how this time of the year feels to you. We today, with the inauguration, it feels like a new thing has begun, right? And it has. We're ending a time and we're beginning a time. And that is almost like a new year, right? And we're going to have, by the time Imbolc rolls around, we're also going to be in Mercury retrograde this year. And so as we go into Mercury retrograde, we have to recognize that the time of Mercury retrograde is about going within. It's about doing our shadow work. It's about cleaning out the stuff that we don't need anymore, right? It's literally a great time to clean out your closets, right? So, but it's a great way to clean out the virtual, the emotional closets, right? And so how does that play into how you want to experience your Imbolc experience, right? How does the moon phase play into it? How does the sign that we're in play into it? How does what's going on in your life play into it?
And as we talk about the Wheel of the Year, we said, that's the cycle of the sun. We've talked about the lunar cycle, the sign where things are. All of these are ways that we can leverage not just the state of things, but also the collective state of things to be able to do the work we need to do. And a lot of these major milestones that we hit, the year, the moon cycle, whatever it is, a lot of these milestones and in our transformation work that we're doing is about finding these points to clean and pull in what we want and get rid of what we don't need. It's this recognition that there are purge moments in our lives that we need to be able to be ready to walk into. Now, we've done Yule, and now we're at Imbolc. We'll have another Wheel of the Year coming up in the next holiday. The next milestone point, what will that one be?
That will be Beltane, which most people know of as May Day. So the 1st of May.
All right. So we'll be back with this the 1st of May. I also want to add a teaser in here because you brought it up. So I'm blaming you for it. You talked about when you do your sound healings that you channel different things. Next episode, we're going to be able to experience that. For those who have not experienced some of the sound healing episodes you've done in the past, you're planning to do a sound healing in the next episode of Spirit Sherpa.
Yes, I am. And
you forgot that, didn't you?
I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. It was on the calendar, I knew, but I don't remember what I said it was going to be. But if you're a fan of the sound healings, another way to get more of them is actually to be part of the Moon Magic Circle too, because I actually put the sound healing. There's a sound healing for every month. For every bit of working that you guys do in that circle, as I do a sound healing to support the work. So if you find that the sound healings are your jam, then you want more, then that's a good way to get it, is to be part of the Moon Magic Circle.
Yeah. And speaking of the Moon Magic Circle and some things you have going on, we haven't talked about Inner Peace 101 in a while. What's going on with that? How are things looking there?
Oh, amazing. I actually just talked to one of my students about coming on and being interviewed. She's super excited. So she'll be coming up soon. But the Inner Peace 101 is the finding emotional safety piece, right? And so, we keep talking about how magic is a function of your ability to hold, focus, and wield your energy while standing in your power, right? And when you have come from a challenged childhood, that limits your ability to do that. There are panic functions that kick in. There are worthiness issues. There is fear of being powerful because you might hurt somebody. There's fear of being powerful because you don't want to be responsible for stuff. There's so many things, right? There's a lot of different pieces and parts that get in the way. And so in the Inner Peace 101 program, what we do is we get you through the major blocks to doing your personal growth work that allows you to really solidify your intention and your focus and your energy and your power, right? And so that program is designed to work on anxiety and worry and dread and self-doubt and judgments, inner and outer. And it's also designed to build a sense of self-support and to build your courage muscles. And so all of those things together make you less resistant to doing your personal work, partly because we teach you what resistances are and how to overcome them, and partly because we're working with you on all of the emotional stuff, and we're working with you on all the energetic stuff. So we work with you on the boundaries for empaths, which you can get in the Spirit Sherpa by Kelle Sparta group on Facebook. That's in the units section in there. You can get that for free. But we work with that, and we also work on shielding, and we work on protecting your house, warding your house, and we work on clearing your energy field, and we work on divination and talking to your guides. And so we're setting a solid foundation for your magical practice while we're doing the things that need to be done in order to soothe your spirit and your emotional and your inner child, right? And so all of those things together get accomplished in that first program. So it's really quite comprehensive, and it is life-changing.
And that's why that program, Inner Peace 101, is the prerequisite program to any of the mystery school larger programs that you do, correct?
Yeah. The only thing you can do without having done Inner Peace 101 is the Moon Magic series. Yeah.
And you do some ritual work in terms of teaching people about ritual and that as well, the lunar
in the Moon Magic. Yes. Yeah. The very first month of the Moon Magic series is an entire class on ritual basics.
Right. Because you need that to do ritual.
There you go. Novel concept.
Awesome. This has been fantastic. Kelle, how about a Kellyism before we head out today?
Just because it looks like it's all over the place doesn't mean it is. Everything was purposeful.
I'm going to have to sit with that one. I'm not sure what it hits, but it sounds really important. All right, folks, that is all that we have for this week, but be sure to join us next time as Kelle adds another chapter into your guide to energy, magic, and the spirit world. I'm Joey C., here with Kelle Sparta, and you have been listening to Spirit Sherpa. So long, everyone.
Bye.
Each mile I travel over 13,000 now.
Spirit Sherpa is the sole property of Kelle Sparta Enterprises and is distributed under a Creative Commons BY-NC-ND 4.0 license. For more information about this licensing, please go to www.creativecommons.org. Any requests for deviations to this licensing should be sent to kelly@kellesparta.com. To sign up for or get more information on the programs, offerings, and services referenced in this episode, please go to www.kellesparta.com. This episode of Spirit Sherpa has been produced by Honu Voice Productions, with post-production by Christopher Wright.
Into my home and my love and my life.